I've rearranged the reference images on my backdrop so that the images of eyeballs and the structure and placement of the lids and the depth of the eyeball are all just a little lower in my sight line, so I don't I can be just looking back and forth quickly. I've also just temporarily placed an eyeball in the skull, mostly for checking the depth of that eyeball. When you're gathering references, if you can't find something that suits your needs or gives you what you're hoping to find, use yourself as a model. If you're a young person, though, you probably don't have as many interesting wrinkles and frown lines and droopy bits from age and gravity. These are the really interesting parts in here, all of these fine these fine wrinkles that happen in here. And I'm not going to worry about that yet. It's more the structure of the eyelids. So just one at a time, I'm going to place these eyes, and I might need to just open up the brows a little bit. I'd rather open them up and squish them back down later. And so you want to make sure you get this. You want to make sure you get this right. So I'm going to check that from the side. If anything, I want these eyes to be a little bit bulgy, so they maybe would sit forward a little more than in a regular human reference. I don't want them bulging right out, but probably about there. That's probably good. So the first one's always easy, comparatively. Because what you don't want to end up with is eyes that are, unless that's your intent. I do want these facing the same direction, and I do want the direction of his gaze, for lack of a better word, to be straightforward. Again, checking that depth again. I'm also thinking about the angle. So with my head tilted, I have to make sure those eyes are on the same tilt. On the same angle. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. Again, I notice I've got some symmetry issues between these corners of the socket. I can start by kind of pushing the brows around it. And now very slowly, I'm going to build up the eyelids. I know the temptation is to just put one, flat, one giant flat form on. And that is giving me, you know, essentially what I want in terms of the expression. I think I had mentioned that earlier, that I do want the lids to be doing this a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pack around the eyes a little bit. Being careful not to move the direction. So just filling that in a little bit. If you're wondering why I made the sockets so big only to fill them in later, having the large eye socket really gives you lots of flexibility on how you want to place the eyes. So I'm just checking this, probably a little hard to see. And working in our usual manner of taking one piece, trying to split it as evenly as possible so you're working with similar sized chunks. Going to place those. Not gonna blend those in yet. Again, I want those bottom lids to really droop unnaturally, like this reference image there. So just placing them roughly for now. And then a little bit larger shapes for the top lids. Again, knowing that there's quite a bit I can fill in here. I can compress that a little bit, but I don't want to alter the silhouette that much. Also bring that brow down. So it's becoming a little more serious, but again, the wide open eyes, it just reads a certain way. Well, one more comment on references. Personally, I like to find subject matter with lots of wrinkles and saggy bits. So be nice to your grandparents in case you ever need to take a photograph of their wrinkly old neck. A good online source is cosmetic surgery websites, and just scour the before pictures. That's more interesting. The human anatomy in my opinion, human anatomy in its natural state as it starts to age and sag and wrinkle up. It's way more interesting from a sculptural perspective. I think that's why you see lots of artists when they are making their own creatures, things like old sea hags and goblins and zombies. More interesting to sculpt because there's lots of wrinkles and folds and fleshy bits. Botox Barbie, not as interesting, in my opinion. If your opinion differs, that's cool. Resisting the urge to try to sculpt too much at once, to get too many forms on it at once. So I'd rather start small and build it up. So if you're someone that's sort of halfway following along on these videos, I hope that you're starting to find your own techniques and find some ways of sculpting that are maybe different than what I'm doing, but effective for how your brain operates and how your hands operate. So I'm setting that lid under that brow. And the other thing that's important is to remember that there's a definite ridge on our eyelids. Okay, they're not paper thin. Where they meet the eyeball. And it's actually better to exaggerate that and have it maybe a little bit thicker and a little bit flatter than it is in reality, rather than having it too thin and have it look like this piece of paper that floats over the eye. Okay, so again, certainly have lots of some meat to put on there, and I might that's going to help me kind of pull these together. I might pull that lid. I'm going to put the other one on, and I might end up pulling that lid down just a little bit. Maybe I can sacrifice the that little highlight that I painted on. That's fine if I don't see that, because maybe they need to droop a little bit more. But I'm going to put the other lid on and then think about that adjustment. If I have to lower them a little bit and even make that kind of rides up here a little bit, I think I maybe want more of an angle here, so that again we're getting this kind of drooping action in the face where things are pulling down. Okay, so we'll leave it there and I'll carry on. Getting a little closer, at least on the eye on the right, which is the character's left eye, to the kind of the overall attitude and expression and kind of structure that I'm after. The other thing I did is I just took some black acrylic paint and just covered up those faux highlights that I had put on. I just found they were a little bit distracting, and they weren't even enough. Later on I'll decide if and how I want to deal with that. But really, what I've been doing is taking tiny chunks of clay and just filling in some of those gaps to start. And what I was doing on that bottom lid was just taking this tool and just kind of rolling it down and really exaggerating those lids, which aren't certainly not realistic in terms of human anatomy, but they're rooted in real anatomy, so that the distortion and the exaggeration still feeling somewhat believable. And try not to get too focused on any texture. It's really just really about the form for now, and drooping that lid down a little bit more. So I think what I did was just actually added some material to that lid. As I've said multiple times, you got to give yourself permission to make things rough at this point. Just adding little bits of clay at a time. So almost like this a little bit better, where it really sags in the corner and then droops down a little lower here, rather than this one that is really straight across and droops down. So I've got some decisions to make. Again, trying to keep that ridge in the lid. So my next, the next bit of work I will be doing is, deciding on what I want those lids to look like, and making sure that I've got enough symmetry happening. But you can, I hope you can see that in a short while we were really able to push the expression in a specific direction. We've dealt with a lot of the geometry and the structure, but by placing the eyes and at least getting started on the lids, we're starting to read the expression, which will help inform, how this lid pulls down here will inform what we do with some of the mass here, and a little further down the road what we do with the wrinkles and the texture line. We'll leave the lids where they are for now. They're close enough. I think the next step will be to now build out the brow. You can see from the reference photos here and here, there's normally not that much lid showing, and even in the original drawing. But that was good to get the actual spheres of the eyeballs covered. We've got them wrapping around. We've got our little bit of a ridge. So now what we can do is build the brow out and over a little bit. Again, back to the reference drawing, a fairly prominent brow, and that will also allow us to bring the brow down, matching this little slope of the eyelid here. So that will be the next step.